A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, it is a period of getting your hands dirty. Two sapphic disasters make each other better and worse as they struggle against terrible men, personal angst, and some bad decision making. But isn't that what the greatest love stories are always made of? Love Lies Bleeding is rated R for graphic language and depictions of sex, drug use, and violence. Please proceed according to your needs and comfort level. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. The views expressed therein are solely those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of their employers.
Hello there, and welcome back to 6 Degrees of Star Wars, the podcast where we explore all the ways George Lucas's flagship franchise surrounds us, binds us, and penetrates us in the landscape of cinema. I'm your host, Sam Marchioni. Joining me today, Meredith Cook.
All I wanna do is see you turn into a giant lesbian,
Ellie McConaughey.
I want it on the record that Katie O'Brien's wife in her Twitter profile back when Twitter was a thing, described Katie as sex on a skeleton, and I think she's underselling it.
And for the very first time, please welcome Bradley.
I am mentally locked on Dave Franco with a mullet right now. What a remarkable image.
We are continuing this very sapphic month of romance with Love Lies Bleeding, the 2024 movie by Rose Glass, starring among its cast are Degree 4, Katie O'Brien, who is known in The Mandalorian as Ellie Kane, that one Imperial cop in The Mandalorian who does sneaky shit. I don't know. The Mandalorian's kind of been going off the rails, you guys.
I've never watched a second of The Mandalorian, so my first introduction to Katie O'Brien was, and I'm very ashamed of this, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I'm just sitting there in this theater thinking, this movie is a piece of shit. And then this buff chick shows up, I'm like, hi.
Yeah, that is what I understand to be the normal reaction to Katie O'Brien.
Yeah, I think so.
As is was my reaction to Katie O'Brien in this
movie. I have multiple notes in my notes about this movie. This is like my 5th or 6th time watching this. I think I'm the only one who saw this before this recording.
I wrote down my initial thoughts. I knew that it had lesbians, and then Fight Club, 3 question marks, cannibalism, 3 question marks. I had no goddamn clue what this film was about.
You know, lesbian Fight Club.
No. The lesbian can't. There. Okay, I'm writing that down. Lesbian.
That's just
Club.
Bottoms. Anyway.
That's literally just Bottoms. Welcome to our fucking Fight Club. Anyway, I have in my notes, like, K-Stu the first time she sees Katie O'Brien. Yeah, K-Stu, I get it. Katie the first time she looks at K-Stu. Yeah, Katie, I get it. They're both so hot in this movie.
Hot.
I swear to God.
She heard grade A dyke and was like, sweet, let's go.
I love that moment because that dude's clearly trying to get Katie to leave, and Katie's like, oh, yeah.
This is such a sweaty film.
It is.
It's a sweaty film. It's a horny film.
Deeply horny.
Like, so much
horny.
So much of K-Stu's performance is just her looking at Katie with an expression that communicates, I need her more than I need oxygen right now.
Very true.
Anyway.
So what the fuck was this movie?
It was so
y'all.
Much. It's absolutely...
It's so much. There's like 2.5 movies in this movie.
It's unrelenting, yeah.
I was watching some of the special features, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago, and apparently it was cut down from, like, there are these moments of sudden, just very intense weirdness. The big ones are, we're getting to spoilers here, so if you haven't seen this movie, go see this movie, where Jackie transforms into a giant out of fucking nowhere, and also the scene where she hallucinates vomiting K-Stu. Apparently, the original cut of the movie was a lot more stuff like that, which tracks Rose Glass's previous movie, Saint Maud, was a lot of stuff like that. Great movie.
I'm sure, but also, God, I am a strangely tender soul at times, and this movie went into some nope territory for me. Like,
yeah.
I am not a muscle fan.
I'm not a
I'm
muscle
learning.
person, I'm not a veins bulging person, not a feet person, and I'm not a needles person. So...
You see, y'all are sitting here worrying. I was worried that people would be like, should I warn people about the needles? And
Yes!
Yeah, hey,
I'm sorry, I didn't know. Like, I was like, by the time I thought to warn you, like, you'd already rolled it. And I also figure, like, people look up their own trigger warnings. I'm not going to run through everything in a movie. She also, like, smashes a dude's face fully in half at one point.
Yeah.
I can excuse brutal assault or murder, but I draw the line at eating a beetle.
But, like, the thought that I had this particular time, because what's happened since I watched this last and this viewing is I moved to injections for my HRT. And I was watching this happen, like, you're being real unsafe with those needles. You need to sterilize it.
Congratulations on moving to your needles, by the way.
Woohoo!
Thank you.
Bradley, how you doing?
Oh, so Ellie's been recommending this one to me for a while, and I, honestly almost regret not watching it sooner. Like, it was intense and brutal and violent, and there's a lot of, like, violence and just this oppressive atmosphere, but also, you know, that certain sense of eroticism that made it a kind of... I mean, like, I was absolutely locked in for this experience. It was so intense, throwing so much at me, that I'm still a little bit reeling, but I definitely enjoyed it. I will admit, I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Yeah, this movie grabs you by the throat and does not let go for 2.5 hours. Or 2.5? An hour 45?
It's 90 minutes.
It feels
it's,
longer, not gonna lie.
Yeah,
There is a lot
so
of
on
content.
the Ellie parameters of weird, long, and gay, I think we're only going to say weird and gay.
Weird and gay for sure.
I think that one of the reasons why I get along with Bradley, and Bradley is here because he's a friend of mine who also has appeared on my podcast, and I think one of the reasons we get along is because he and I have very, not just similar taste in movies, because I feel like we probably disagree about as often as we agree, but similar approaches to movies. You know, there's that quote from Tenet, which is, don't try to think, just feel it.
Just feel it.
And, like, sometimes that's how I am about movies. It's like, I don't need to like, fully intellectualize this on my first viewing. I just gotta feel it.
There's actually a quote from John Waters about this film, which is, he described it as something that Russ Meyer would have made if he had been a lesbian addicted to steroids. It's an incredibly specific descriptor, but I think it's spot on. It really has that sort of the way things are presented where even as intense as things get, you know, this film I think enjoys what it's doing to some, like it's showing images and it's very unashamed of itself, which I think is like I'm a sucker for that.
Another thing I want to give props to in regards to its imagery, this is a beautifully shot movie. Like,
Oh, absolutely.
I can't remember the last time I looked at a movie and was like, the colors look so nice and everything looks so crisp and I can see at night.
Amen for
The
that.
reds.
It's an incredibly pretty movie, and, like, just the shot composition on a lot of stuff. I don't know what Rose Glass is planning for her next movie, but she's very good at, like, just making stuff, even very dark stuff, visually and thematically look very, very good. And, like, one of the things that, you know, we're talking about dark, so we're gonna get into it. Like, it's a horny movie. It's a movie about people having sex a lot of the time. I have this recurring joke that I say that I can tell if a lesbian sex scene was directed by a man or a woman just looking at it. And I can. And part of that is what parts of the body the camera chooses to focus on. And this is an incredibly... Like, I don't know Rose Glass, I don't know her personal sexuality, but this is a very dykey camera, if you know what I mean.
A whole scene dedicated to fingering and we don't see any pussy. Like, that's some lesbian shit there. And I do recall seeing nipples in this, so we cannot accuse me of nipple blindness.
There are indeed nipples. And also shout out to the intimacy coordinator on this film, Christy Mahue, because, damn, the intimacy is popping.
Anyone wants to tell me, oh, you can't have an erotic scene and have an intimacy coordinator, I'm going to make them watch this movie and tell them to shut the fuck up.
Go home, Mikey Madison, and think about your life.
Did she say that? That's a bummer.
She said some shit about, like, not wanting an intimacy coordinator for Honora, even though she was offered one. God, Best Actress this year has become more and more of a fucking mess, hasn't it?
Yeah.
We're just locked in on Demi Moore.
Demi Moore for the win.
Just ignoring everyone else. Okay, maybe Cynthia Erivo, but everyone else.
Yeah, because I guess for some reason the Academy looked at this and wasn't like, oh, you know, we could consider nominating this. Like, I want to ask why the fuck we ever tried to put Kristen Stewart in anything other than gay films, because this is clearly where she belongs.
She has found her stride.
One of the things that I really like about Case 2, and part of the problem is that, like, when I say this shit, people think that I'm being sarcastic because people are still stuck in 2009 about Case 2. Kristen is an incredibly versatile actress. She's extremely good in The Clouds of Silmaria and Personal Shopper. She did those back-to-back, and those are extraordinarily different performances. She's also in Spencer from a couple of years ago, which I think is just, if nothing else, an incredibly acted film. She is up there alone. But this is a very... So the thing about romance movies is you have to buy the chemistry, and I really buy the chemistry here. I believe that she is attracted to Katie, because I think she probably is, because it's very hard not to be.
I feel like in this, like, outside from the wild line deliveries of, like, yeah, Dad, I am threatening you. There's such subtlety, I feel like, in this film sometimes, where she's just, like, looking at Katie or just, like, thinking through a plan, and you can, like, totally see that.
I've been joking all year, and I will continue to joke, that, like, all three of my favorite line reads of 2024 are from this movie. Mm-hmm. And they are. But I think you're right. I think that it's incredibly... I think those are, like, the big funny line reads. You know, her tossing back over her shoulder, "Love you, sis," after having tortured her sister for information. is just a great moment. But, like, my actual favorite, one of my favorite lines in the entire movie is, "I fucking love you, you idiot."
Real.
This movie is full of really incredible lines. One of my favorites, I want to, give a little shout out to, he got smashed in the head and set on fire, apparently. Just how matter of fact and blunt it was. And I think that's one of the things that really appealed to me here, where all of the everything is presented with a sort of bluntness. Mm-hmm. It's right there. Subtlety be damned.
I know writers who use subtext and they're all cowards.
Absolutely, yeah.
Absolutely. I compare this movie a lot to my favorite directors, which is the Wachowski sisters, and they have that same lack of subtlety about stuff that they want to do. They're also, like, very heavily have the theme of love above all other things. This is a movie where you could very justifiably have them, like, go their separate ways at the end of the movie, and they distinctly do not.
Oh, I thought for sure one of them was going to be dead. Glad I was wrong.
No dead lesbians here. Or dead bisexuals in Jackie's case.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Like, Bound was very much on my mind while I was watching this, because Bound is so much more streamlined than this, because there's, like, 3 or 4 different things happening, mostly to do with Lou Sr., who I was very relieved to find out was not played by James Wood, but was played by Ed Harris.
He's the most wrinkly man I've ever seen on celluloid.
Your guide to, if you're watching a live-action movie and James Wood is in it, is if it's about whether or not it's good. Is it Videodrome? Then it's good. Otherwise, no, get it out of here. Chuck it. Get rid of it.
I'm 100% with you there. Ed Harris, though, like, in regards to being the wrinkliest man on the planet, he has such an intense look. I love him in this, with the long hair occasionally tied off in the ponytail.
The skullet.
Oh, yeah, and the big hat and everything.
And the bugs,
way he walks.
It's so distinctive.
Yeah, it's just, what an odd fellow. And this was, it's a film full of interesting characters. These sort of, like, intense people. Of course, Dave Franco with his mullet, he's not in the movie for very long, luckily. But
we're spared the mullet.
we are spared. But he, his performance is brief, but he really, really delivers a pretty good level of slime.
Oh, yeah.
Like, JJ is so unpleasant right away.
If you want to see another really good, scummy Dave Franco performance, check out the first season of The After Party. You can check out both seasons of The After Party. They're pretty fucking fun. But the first season is the one that features Dave Franco as the murder victim who absolutely had it coming.
Hell yeah. I find Dave Franco very amusing in this movie because, like, he exists at the grace of his wife, whom he visibly hates. There's like, if I was him, there's a scene where he's like basically taunting K-Stu. I'm like, man, you work for her dad. You know she has killed multiple people. I would not fuck with her. And like, there is a great scene. Like, we were talking about subtle performances, and Ed Harris does not have a whole lot of screen time overall, even if he kind of looms very large over the entire movie. But like, there's that scene in the hospital where they get there and Beth has been put in the hospital by Dave Franco, by JJ. And you're sort of like sitting there going like, why the fuck is this mob boss allowing his daughter to get beaten by this guy? And you sort of realize with the conversation they have, oh, he is respecting Beth's wishes because he doesn't actually want to particularly do anything about it. It's such an awful realization.
Yeah, because like Kristen Stewart mentions at one point that like she's tried to get the cops to talk about it, but Beth won't do anything about it. And it's like, okay, so it feels like there are two things here. There could have been Beth doesn't want her husband getting turned in because for whatever fucking reason she's in love with this monster of a man, or it's dad won't let him get turned in because if the cops investigate him for domestic violence, they're going to start finding out other shit. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't end up happening. And it also turns out, oh, guess what? JJ was actually snitching to the feds the whole time. Which, I don't fucking know, man. The whole criminal dad thing feels like it's there and it hasn't been developed fully enough, you know?
I think I agree up to an extent. There was one, like, visual motif that when K-Stu was, like, remembering her past being an assassin for her dad, it was just bathed in this red light. And then there's that scene in the hospital where she's by the Coke machine and talking to her dad, and half her face is in red from the Coke machine, like, about to fuck shit up, but then her girlfriend kills him for her.
See, that's the thing. Like, I think that the presence of the dad is there as sort of like this counterbalance, because her dad always does what is hypothetically the smart thing to get them away with all the shit they're doing, because that's already what he wants to do. Whereas, like, Jackie might make stupid decisions, but she makes them out of, like, a genuine desire to do what she thinks Lou wants. And that sort of, like, creates this counterbalance where, like, her dad's love is, like, very controlling and very, you have to do it my way, whereas K-Stu sort of has to accept Jackie as she is, even when she, like, gets pissed and beats a man to death in his own home. Which, you know, based
or
of
fucks
her.
off to Vegas for a day.
Yeah, the Vegas sequence, that was where I started to get the feeling that the two leads are playing characters who almost feel like they're in different storylines entirely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, you know, each of their stories features all of the details of the others. But then, so we've got, you know, Jackie is kind of having her sort of dark romance with some triumphant elements leading towards the bodybuilding competition and all of her dreams following thereafter. And then we have Lou, who is living in this world where she's surrounded by, you know, this all-encompassing world of organized crime that, you know, to some degree she will never be able to escape. And then Lou Sr. ends up, when he retrieves Jackie, sort of tying those two together, which I think is interesting. Mm-hmm. He almost serves the role of, like, containing the story in a way, if that makes sense.
I mean, like, if it weren't for the influence of Lou's family, they absolutely would just fuck off to Vegas and then probably fuck off to California. I do think that one of my favorite narrative, I don't want to call it devices, like framing for characters, is when basically you can tell that each character thinks they're in a different genre of movie. My favorite example of this is a highly underrated Coen Brothers film, Burn After Reading, where like every individual character makes decisions based on what movie they think they're in, and none of them are right. And like, I think Bradley sort of hit the nail on the head. Like, Lou is in a film noir where she has to deal with where her femme fatale is fucking Daisy.
God, Daisy.
Oh God, fucking Daisy.
Daisy.
Oh, poor Daisy.
They really pulled out the stops to make that character as unappealing as possible.
Yeah.
I love Daisy as a character. She's so awful. And it's straight up like her death is timed for
Yeah.
comedy.
The crustiest pick-me girl I've ever seen.
Well, her death, or at least the fake out of her death, because we do get...
Yeah, when
God,
she gets
yeah.
shot.
How did she live through that?
That is an interesting question. But that final shot, the shot through the window where Jackie is sleeping in the truck, while Lou drags the body out into the desert and then rifles through her bag to retrieve that joint and smoke it to calm her nerves. That is one of the funniest things I've seen in years. I was stunned. It truly is a remarkable final shot.
I was like, oh my god, that's how it... I guess that's where we're ending, okay.
I'm not immune to the gag of nothing happening in the foreground while some shenaniganery happens in the background.
An excellent shenanigan.
I don't know. Weird. Like, we're not even really talking about, like, it was one thing when Jackie became a 50-foot woman. Like, that was enough on its own. But then we had, like, unfortunately, I was a teenager when they came out. So absolutely, the two of them running through the clouds wearing sparkly sports bras absolutely reminded me of Twilight.
I wanted to say, and people think that I'm crazy when I point this out. Did you notice in the flashback to when she's working for her dad, she is styled and dressed like Bella?
My God.
Yeah, I noticed. It was unnerving. It was uncomfortable because I don't like thinking about Twilight. I don't like remembering that part of my life. I don't like remembering that I tried to be part of the rehabilitation of Stephenie Meyer, racist piece of shit that she is.
Don't beat yourself up on that account. I will say that one thing that I worry, since now we've covered bodies, and Love Lies Bleeding, is one thing you're gonna start accidentally discovering about me is that I also kind of like a lot of my favorite movies, just kind of a little mean.
It's a little bit mean-spirited and rough around the edges.
Which, that's sort of like one of those things where honestly, The Lure, as my favorite movie, is another really good example. It's kind of just a mean movie. I don't know what that says about me. I guess it kind of like...
Yeah, I actually... At one point in my notes, this is teaching me so much about Ellie that I can't unlearn.
As someone who loves funny games, I can appreciate difficulty with
Bradley,
dealing with a mean-spirited film.
Bradley, you get me.
On some level, I don't oppose the idea of somebody who's willing to stuff a body in a car trunk, drive the car out to a ravine, push the car down into the ravine, and then throw a Molotov cocktail for me. But also, please don't do that. In case either of my partners is listening to this right now, I don't want you to do that. I don't want you to shank anybody. I would like you to keep not engaging in criminal activities purely for the sake of your own safety.
I mean, I would prefer that my partners not do that for me either. But it's comforting to think that if push came to shove, they'd be down.
Yeah, Kristen Stewart in this movie will kill someone and go down on you, but will she do the dishes?
Yes, she makes eggs.
Shit, she's the perfect woman. God damn it.
I wouldn't be surprised if she didn't want to do that dishes, considering that fucking toilet.
Ugh.
I thought when that toilet came up at the beginning, and then there was that bit about the lady coming back to complain about the toilet again, I thought like the toilet was gonna have some kind of big payoff at the end.
Nah, she just has a lot of practice cleaning crime scenes, I guess.
I think that is the implication.
I think it's supposed to let us know that the character can deal with some level of gruesomeness, but also I think it serves to desensitize the audience a little bit. Showing you that very grounded, relatable, a lot of people have encountered something similar to this in some fashion image where it's like, all right, it kind of pushes you past that barrier of dealing with wild things, so when a character is shot through the face and their blood splatters all over the back of the protagonist, you're not quite as shocked, but still pretty shocked. I've been we mentioned it earlier, but I'm just thinking about the growth to giant size. Because like you can be thinking about it, and you can be ready for all the shit that this film's gonna throw at you, and then it throws a 50-foot woman at you, and you're like, okay, I guess this is the movie now. I was Ed Harris in that moment, looking at that and saying, oh, what the fuck? So
the Rosetta Stone to understand this, and I know that not a lot of people have seen Saint Maud. But, like, spoiler for Saint Maud, very good movie. I don't think anyone besides Bradley in this pod would actually like it.
I appreciate the honesty.
It went to the top of my list after watching this.
Love you, Bradley. Is the movie ends with the main character sort of ascending to heaven as everyone on the beach where she's doing this crowd around her in awe, watching her, and then the last, like, 5 seconds of the movie are a smash back to reality where all she's doing is immolating herself. So I think that Rose Glass likes the last minute sort of visualization of an emotional importantly followed by the smack back to reality. You know, I don't think that Jackie in the literal fiction of the film transformed into 50 feet tall. I think that's how she feels in K-Stu's head because she came back for her.
Yeah, the first time that she appeared larger was right after she killed JJ. We see her just towering over his corpse in the room. She
Great
looks
shot.
8 or 9 feet. That was one of my favorite shots, and that was the note I actually wrote. Like, what an incredible way to demonstrate the strength that this character is feeling, that she feels huge right now. She feels like a monster, but in a good way.
Yeah.
Something else that I think, like, the climax of the movie could have used, there was that big dramatic rumble of thunder as Kristen Stewart was running to get Katie O'Brien out of the shed or whatever. I'm like, okay, the thunder's rumbling. Where's the big dramatic rain to soak my lovers as they tearfully reunite?
Katie is sheltering K-Stu from it because she's so tall.
I love how this film depicts female rage. That was the only thought.
You're right. I like that it's not like, it doesn't look flattering. You know, I feel like
it's messy. I love how messy this movie is.
I like Gone Girl a lot, but I'm very tired of that being like our female rage icon, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
If I were going to pick a female rage movie, I'd pick Bottoms, but, you know, this one it's okay. Like, it's very visceral. I think that it sometimes crosses the line into being so visceral that it goes past rage into, like, almost fetish territory.
Yeah. When I was describing this movie to my roommate, I said, of all the movies that came out in 2024 surrounding lesbians and bodies in the back of the trunk and taking place in the late 20th century, this is my second favorite because I was expecting Drive-Away Dolls a little bit because I had watched that first, and I think I prefer Drive-Away Dolls personally.
I mean, we're not getting into whether or not the Force is with it
Yet.
or not, although I will say that it is my second favorite movie of 2024, and given that number one is I Saw the TV Glow, like, there's no shame in getting beaten by the champ. I got very annoyed about the state of, like, lesbian cinema in 2024 outside of this movie. Maybe it's just because, like, I went on a date with my girlfriend to see a movie about a character who the movie goes out of its way to state is a lesbian and then have her fall in love with a man.
Evil.
Not great. Didn't love it. So, like, I feel like this is a movie that... There are several movies like this from 2024, and I know that a lot of lesbians really did like this movie, but I do think, like, a lot of straight audiences didn't totally react to it, and it's one of those movies where I just go, this movie rocks, you just don't get it.
I Saw the TV Glow was just mentioned, and there is a sort of a connection between that and this for me, where I certainly enjoyed both quite a bit, but there's an element for this film where I definitely got the impression that I am not, strictly speaking, the target audience for this. So there is a certain level of value and I think understanding and personal experience that I can't bring to this. But I found it kind of interesting to notice that so profoundly. Like, I really did recognize the sort of gaps of my understanding or, things that I couldn't bring to the table.
That's true of basically every movie. There's always going to be stuff that you can't quite bring to the table on a film, and I think that, like, recognizing that and still being able to empathize with it is an important part of being a critic.
I'm definitely there as a critic at this point, but then again, I also took, like, an entire class on feminist criticism while I was doing my graduate degree, and I'm trying to think how that class would react to this movie, because, like, I think that professor would have had a field day with this one for the most part, because she'd be like, oh, it's great for like expressing agency, and it's still like depicting women as they exist within a patriarchal system, and it's critiquing that patriarchal system, because, you know, it is. Like,
It is.
even with some really basic things like the bodybuilders fat-shaming Jackie, which,
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that could have been something, you know, built up a little bit more, like go a little more into Jackie having those kinds of body image issues, but it did still kind of give this sense of both Jackie and Lou, which is Kristen Stewart's character's name, being at the low points they're at because of men enforcing certain systems of power and expectations on them.
But they also kind of like, I don't want to say they like turn those expectations back around, but they very clearly own those expectations. You know, Lou is, you know, that dude says in a way that indicates it is not an unknown quantity around town that Lou is, as he says, a grade A dyke. But like, she's clearly restyled herself from when she was working for her dad to look like that. She dresses like a dyke, if I'm being for real. And Jackie explicitly says, like, I was heavy and people made fun of me, so now I'm this, now I'm buff. So, like, I don't know, always kind of reticent to, like, automatically say, because it has a lady director, it is a feminist film. I think that that's a reductive. But I do think it definitely makes its female characters subjects as opposed to objects, even while it's shooting the sex. So we're not gonna talk about the whole foot fetish thing?
Yeah.
I don't even know where to start there.
Not a fan. New choice.
You know, I mean, that's not my fetish. Although I will say, I don't know Rose Glass, and she doesn't have a very extensive filmography. But, you know, if that is what she's into, she has more guts than Tarantino.
I would have been fine with this movie having the foot fetish and all. Like, it's not for me, but it's whatever. But then the bruising at the injection site, that was where I noped out.
Yeah, I think it's too much, too many squicky things for me, to be honest. From the foot stuff to the needles to the throwing up your girlfriend. Especially going into it very, very blind was a bit of a rough experience for me, not gonna lie.
You know, I would say that next time I'll warn you, but I think that, like,
it's a rite of passage with this film, I feel like, to go in and be like, hey, what the fuck?
I mean, like, I don't believe in that shit, you know,
Yeah.
Fuck it. Fuck that nonsense. You know, I was gonna say that, like, I think this is the outer limit of movies I would recommend for Sam's Pod. So no, you're not gonna get recommended Videodrome or In the Realm of the Senses or Machine Girl versus Frankenstein Girl for this pod, Sam. Don't worry.
I don't even know what those films are. Fear.
Don't worry about it.
I'm curious what you all thought about the ambiguity in Jackie's backstory. We get that one moment where she calls home.
Oh, yeah.
Or I'm assuming it's a call home.
Yeah.
And it's called a monster, and we don't really see much more.
Yeah, that felt heartbreaking.
The interpretation a lot of people want to go for is the whole, like, she's adopted, so that's where the giant size thing is. Like, she's a monster, literally. Unfortunately, I think it might be a little bit more common in that she's bisexual, you know?
Yeah.
Go into the fact that, like, K-Stu is bisexual and playing the lesbian, and Katie O'Brien is a lesbian playing the bi. No, that's not really worth going into, is it?
I don't know how... The phone call just felt heartbreaking to me because, like, it seemed like she has a little sibling who does actually care about her. And so I was focused more on that than the deeper symbolism.
Yeah. And her just, like, screaming into the phone, never fall in love, it's not worth it, was just heartbreaking.
The title of the film is Love Lies Bleeding. I think that it's a movie about the lengths to which love can drive you, but I think that it's telling that that those lengths don't break them, when, like, the implication, we never find out if, like, who is correct on what happened to Lou's mom. Her dad claims she ran off. The FBI and Lou think that he killed her. But, like, obviously she wasn't willing to go to those lengths for love. Regardless of which is true. They found a limit to their love. Jackie and Lou have not.
And, I mean, like, even fucking Beth is, like, going to certain limits for love.
Yeah.
The main thing that sticks with me with Beth is that fucking makeup of that, like, egg-sized lump on her face. Ugh.
It's very uncompromising in a way that I think is intended to make the audience uncomfortable. Because, like, my dad was a public defender for a while and then a prosecutor for a little while after that. He's told me some DV stories. And, like, yeah, you would come across a woman who had injuries like that, who would be like, no, I don't want to press charges. I love him. I want to go home to him. And it's just like, what do you even fucking do at that point?
And the way that, like, when one of her kids had a birthday party at her hospital room and she's just like, her voice breaks just trying to talk to her son. And
This movie's so well acted across the board.
Absolutely.
I promised in the chat that I would break out my, like, sliding scale of unconventional declarations of sapphic love. Where do we feel that I love you, you fucking idiot lands?
I think I love you, you fucking idiot kind of feels conventional to me.
Yeah.
So it's at the
On the
close end?
closer
Okay.
end, I'd say.
I'm gonna agree with that for sure, because it's you know, there's the heightened emotion of it, but it's, you know, it's not that far outside of the bounds of normal.
Gideon the Ninth stands alone, as always.
So here's a question. How well trained did Lou's dad actually have her? Because seems pretty fucking stupid to me. I made a note of this, that she opened the door for the cops.
Literally. Yeah.
Literally.
They didn't have a warrant, Lou.
They didn't have a warrant. You have a body behind the couch. They're gonna smell it. A guy is checking.
I literally have in my notes, come on, Lou, you never let law enforcement in your house. Your answer is always,
With a
come
warrant.
back with a warrant.
Like, your dad's a crime lord. You should know this.
Well, I guess, especially since she shoved the car into her dad's, like, favorite body dumping spot. And she was, like, very much of, like, a fuck it, I'm gonna bring him down with me sort of energy. Maybe it was something like that, but I don't know, man.
I do find it extremely funny that the two people who die on screen in this movie both they think that it's a good idea to, like, threaten someone who they know is involved in murder. Like, Daisy is sitting there like, hey, person who was involved with murder, I'm gonna blackmail you. I'm like, what do you think is gonna happen here, Daisy?
Yeah. Speaking of characters that think they're in their own film.
You know, I think Daisy thinks that she is in a quirky, small-town comedy.
She thinks she's a manic pixie dream girl.
She is not.
She's a deeply exhausting character, yeah.
She's exhausting in a very realistic way, too.
Here's a quick question that maybe will power word age somebody. How many of y'all watched Teen Titans, the original Teen Titans Cartoon Network series?
I've seen a few episodes.
I've probably watched all of it.
You want to get power words aged here? I'm doing it to myself. It was just a little bit too young for me when it was coming out.
Right, so there's an episode in that where Robin gets blackmailed into going to prom with a supervillain's daughter because her boyfriend dumped her, and she's like all over him, making a big deal out of this because she's, you know, trying to win the breakup or whatever. That's what Daisy feels like to me.
Oh, absolutely. Especially calling when Katie's character calls and she's like, don't call here, she chose me, she's mine.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like, the unwanted nicknames, like,
Lulu.
You don't look at Kristen Stewart looking like that and call her Lulu.
Yeah.
My impression of Daisy is that since it's a small town and K-Stu is, by her own admission, has never been anywhere else, is that she probably knew her before she looked like that and is, like, assuming it's a phase or something, which, fuck you, Daisy. But yeah, don't call her Lulu. She's Lou for a reason. You also wouldn't call her Louise like her dad does. Ugh. Lot of stuff happening with names in this movie now that I think about it.
There is, yeah. It's because we've talked about, you know, of course, Jackie a few times, and Lou calls her Jack quite a bit.
Her mom probably on the phone calls her Jacqueline.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the only other time we hear that is at the bodybuilding competition when she's announced.
It is interesting that they get closer to, like, the names they use for themselves the closer they're related. It's like pretty easy shorthand, but it's good shorthand. It works. You instantly know that her dad doesn't know her very well when he calls her Louise.
I mean, I think Bluesky does know her very well. I think that was meant as a power trip to make her uncomfortable. Kind of like when people... I won't speak to dead naming, but when I was in middle school, I was making the transition from being Samantha to being Sam, and people would still call me Samantha, and I would get really mad about it to the point where... This was back in the day when there were those memes of, like, the pinwheel background and a floating head or an image, and it was that angry wolf thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm still tagged on that in my middle school meme post, and it was not a fun experience to know that people were making fun of me for that.
In my expression of, like, knowing about dead naming, my original... new name was like a slightly more feminine variant of my dead name, and like I was always struck by people who, upon finding out I was trans, would incessantly call me by my dead name, despite the fact that like the name that I originally chose is a gender neutral name, and like people will still try to do it. The part of the reason I went for Ellie is it has absolutely, like, people call me like Elliot or Alan, like, who the fuck are you talking about? Because like it's not about me or my name, you know. It's honestly, it's kind of like, it's extremely, dead naming is a really good comparison, because like people who will incessantly dead name Elliot Page will happily call the lead actor who won Best Actor for Leaving Las Vegas, Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, nobody's calling him Coppola.
Yeah, exactly. It's literally just about, I want to not only disregard your identity, but have you know that I am doing it. This is an extremely fast way to do that.
Yeah.
Something, this film has a theme of, like, remaking yourself, either physically with steroids and bodybuilding, or, like... generally with making a new persona and choosing a new name and dressing yourself differently and having that be respected.
I mean, it's not like a trans mask movie.
Mm-hmm. This is a butch movie for sure.
Yeah,
those are, I'm aware that like trans masks and like butches are like linked arms, but they're not like one-to-one. It is more of a butch movie than it is a trans mask movie, but it's not a not gender movie.
There's some gender going on here.
Gender is sprayed over it like a fine mist. Right?
It's definitely especially legit in the way that Katie O'Brien, I am used to being very, very butch, and then she's the more femme one in this one. Not to say that, like, she's uber femme, but, like, she has the longer curly hair, she wears the frillier, pinker outfits. I think, actually, that might be a lie. I don't think she ever wore a bra in this movie unless it was, like, a sports bra.
Mm-hmm. Or the two-piece for the bodybuilding competition.
Right.
Which is an extremely frilly two-piece.
But she's more willing to go for the femme aesthetic than Lou is.
It is interesting that, like, muscles are considered a hallmark of masculinity, but it is, you're right, that is an angle I hadn't considered. Thank you. Where, like, the size of one's muscles are disconnected from one's attachment to femininity in this movie. That's interesting. And this is a complicated movie.
It is, and, like, it's worth seeing, but,
I don't know if I'll see it twice.
Yeah,
Just me
I don't think I'm gonna be having the stomach to revisit it the way I did with I Saw the TV Glow, because I had a very similar reaction to watching this the first time that I did the first time I saw the TV Glow, which was, Ellie, what the fuck?
I think that, like, the summary of what it is like being recommended movies by me is always going to be, Ellie, what the fuck? With me responding with the innocent smile emoji that I have. As I said, I think this is the far end of the content I would recommend to you. It is not the deep end of the pool by any means.
Has she ever produced a what the fuck from you, Bradley?
You know what? Funny enough, I think the closest to that was the, I'm going to use that word again today, unrelenting experience that is Miami Vice.
Yes!
Wait, Miami Vice or Inherent Vice?
Miami Vice. The was it 2005, the Michael Mann
movie?
Yeah, with Jamie Foxx and Colin Farrell. It is a roller coaster, and just absolutely, it keeps going the whole time.
The advertising for that movie did not sell how strange it is as a product.
Okay.
It's incredibly odd.
Because I did watch Inherent Vice, partially because of Ellie.
I love that movie. That movie, one of its main climaxes is a character walking into a room and eating an entire plate of marijuana, wrappers and all, while the main character watches in abject horror.
Ellie, what the fuck?
Ellie, what the fuck? But to continue my point, this is not the deep end of the pool by any means. We can go much deeper, but I also like try to titrate my recommendations by what I think people are gonna be interested in. And even my interests don't go to the deep end of the pool. And I have had friends where I'm like, I'm sorry, you can't make movie recommendations anymore after that last one. I had a friend who was into shit that's like too much even for me.
Yeah. I don't know if we're there yet, but we might be getting close.
I will reel it in. We'll stick with like Bottoms instead of We're All Going to the World's Fair. I like Bottoms a lot.
I know you do.
It's been a good few years for lesbian cinema. I hope it keeps being a good few years for lesbian cinema, because shit's getting real fucky for queer people right now.
Yeah. Be gay, do cinema.
I think I lost the note. I kept writing sex, drugs, guns, cocaine, lesbians! Exclamation point. I think that's the note that sums up this film.
Well, I think the time has come to ask, is the Force with it? We'll start with Ellie, because I think we all know what Ellie's gonna say.
I'm going to say it again. It was my second favorite movie of last year. I think it's still in my top 10 of the 2020s. I love this movie. Absolutely with it. Jedi Master.
Bradley?
I am going to agree. I really enjoyed this. I'm probably going to check it out again pretty soon, so I would say The Force is with it.
Meredith?
Just because it wasn't my personal cup of tea doesn't mean it can't be other people's cup of tea, so I think The Force is with it.
I will be the dissenting voice. I get why y'all like it. It crossed a few too many lines for me. It squicked me. It's going on the list of, I recognize this is a great movie, I never want to see it again, along with Tar and Nope and The Worst Person in the World.
Fascinating. I love to know.
Who has Pluggables?
I have left TikTok for greener pastures, so you can find me on Instagram at Meredith Cook Official and come see some of my modeling work.
It's perfectly okay if you don't have anything, Bradley.
Yeah, I don't have anything to plug.
Bradley is extremely offline because he is wiser than all of us.
Yes.
As always, I am Ellie McConaughey. You can find me on Bluesky, Medium, and Letterboxd at LSR42, on Tumblr at Football in-tuxedos. And if you want to hear Sam and Bradley, and maybe someday Meredith, you can come check out my podcast, The Biggest Night in Podcasting, where we talk about Oscar-winning movies. They don't award movies this weird Oscars, so don't get your hopes up.
And in the spirit of Star Wars, to be there for the people who need us, this episode's mutual fund spotlight goes to 20 tiny homes for trans women, operated by my sister's house in Memphis, Tennessee. This fundraiser is to help provide shelter for trans and gender nonconforming people of color at a time when they are being ruthlessly and relentlessly targeted. The GoFundMe link can be found in the description for this podcast, as well as on my various socials under my new handle, Demisem. Our theme music is provided by Refractory Period, the two girls, one beat synth pop sensation. You can follow them on Instagram at Refractory Period, the band. To further support this podcast, please subscribe to us on your platform of choice, leave reviews, and share with your friends to boost our visibility, and consider joining our Patreon. And now, it's time to turn to the Chance Cube to decide where our journey takes us next.
Hey, is that a 5?
I think that's a 5.
That is a 5.
That is a 5. Next up is Bottoms.
Yes! Lesbians
Yes!
will rise!
Okay, I need to keep this train rolling. While you're in France, Portrait of a Lady on Fire. Yeah!
We will see you all to start off Women's History Month with Bottoms. Until then, stay safe, stay strong, stay beautiful, and may the Force be with you.